All right, Tundra owners, it's your turn. We've come up with another great collaborative kit between TrailGrid Pro and Alpine. This is your 4-channel amplifier and 8-inch powered subwoofer, specifically designed for your 2014 to 2021 Toyota Tundra. This kit is going to be compatible with both the non-amplified and the amplified non-JBL Tundra options. And one of the best things about this entire kit is you're going to get everything that you need to connect this to either a factory or an aftermarket head unit. If you've been looking to upgrade the audio in your Tundra, but obviously space is limited, this is going to be a great option for you because as you can see here, you have a 4-channel amplifier, an 8-inch powered subwoofer. It fits nicely all into one package with vehicle-specific brackets. This entire assembly is going to fit directly under the passenger seat of your truck. Just like all of our other great products, we've made installation as easy as possible for you as we could without coming out to your house and installing it ourselves. With this package pre-assembled, you're also going to get all of the required harnesses that you need. So a main harness, you get a power harness, you get connections for your 14 to 19 or your 2020 and 2021 vehicle. You can do factory, or like I said, we also have RCAs for aftermarket. If you have an amplified non-JBL Tundra, we also include a amplifier bypass harness. This is going to completely remove that amplified non-JBL factory amplifier and also provide power to your harness. So another great plug and play option. Got another couple pieces here just in case you need them. Again, trying to include everything that you may need to install this in your own driveway or garage. This Alpine bundle is going to use the KTP-445U 4-channel power amplifier. This gives 45 watts RMS by 4 at 2 ohms and 4 ohms with a 14.4 volt max. Partnered with the 4-channel amplifier is Alpine's PWE-S8. That is an 8-inch compact powered subwoofer that is going to fit sleekly under the passenger seat of your Tundra and fill in that much needed bass. Before we jump into the installation of this kit in this 2021 Toyota Tundra, let's talk about a couple of the tools that we're going to need to complete the job. Like always, we need a ratchet, either manual or powered, your trusty 10mm socket, a 14mm socket, a socket extension, a couple of panel or pry tools. We have a plastic and a metal option. Also recommend getting a thin, small flathead screwdriver. We're going to use this towards the end of our installation to fine tune our gain and our amp settings. You need a Phillips head screwdriver, a pair of cutters, and then we will provide a handful of zip ties for you. Just a few tools that you probably already have in your garage, but without any further ado, let's get into the truck, we'll tear it apart, and we'll start putting all of this great audio upgrade into the Tundra. All right, let's start this project by disassembling our Tundra to get the head unit out of the vehicle. So to do that, we're going to need our panel tools, and we're going to actually start here at the bottom of the center of the dash, and we're going to work our way up to get the factory head unit out. All right, we're going to grab one of our panel tools right here below the HVAC control panel. You'll see the gap between it and the next lower panel that contains your factory USB and some of your other button switches. So we're going to take our panel tool and we're going to insert it right between those two panels. And we're just going to gently pry out. Until we get it started. At that point, you can kind of just grab it and we're going to pull it straight back, and you see that there's all of these retaining pins. That's what we're trying to release. So at this point, we can leave this hanging free right now. We'll go ahead and get some other stuff out of the way, and then we'll just disconnect all of these things to make it easier down the road. So next up, the HVAC panel. Just put your fingers under, and we're just going to pull straight back on it. Again, just held in with clips. Go ahead and depress the tab and remove the one connector, and we'll set this out of the way. Next up, get the radio out. There are a total of 4 10mm bolts. There's 2 towards the inside, and then there's 2 further back on the outside So this is where we recommend using your 10mm with an extension. So we're going to go ahead and get those 4 bolts out, and then the whole radio will just pull straight out. So we're going to remove these 4 bolts and we're going to set them in the cup holder for later. All right, so those are the 2 in the front. The next 2 are down the sides here. They're all the way in the back, so definitely recommend an extension to get those 2 out. All right, now we have the 4 10mm bolts out. So we'll go ahead and grab those. And we're going to set those off to the side for safekeeping. Now we have our factory head unit freed up. So all we need to do, again, put your fingers behind, and we're going to pull straight back towards you, and that will free the head unit from the dash. And then we can flip it up here, and to remove the factory head unit, we're going to disconnect every connection on the back here. So just find the tab, just depress the tabs, and then we're going to remove everything. If you're not sure where these go back, before you actually remove the first one, if you're going to reinstall the factory head unit, this is a good time to take a picture of how the connectors are in the head unit, so that way when you get ready to reinstall, that everything's where it should be and the unit powers up and functions as it should. We're going to go ahead and depress all the tabs and remove all the cables to get the head unit out. Now that we have the factory head unit removed, we're going to go ahead and set this to the side. Now that we have our factory head unit removed, we're going to go ahead and disconnect all of the connections here on the lower USB panel. So again, find the tabs for each connector, depress the tab, and remove. And one thing to note on the power for the outlet here, might be a good idea to grab your phone, snap a picture of where the wires go. So we have the red wire goes to the side here, and then the one with the stripe goes to the top. So we'll need to remember that when it's time to reconnect. All right, so we have this panel removed. We can set it off to the side. Next thing we want to do is make access under the cup holder tray here. So to get this off, the next thing we're going to do is take off the shift knob. So we're going to twist counterclockwise. This is just on a threaded post. Then you can lift it up and we'll set it out of the way. To remove the center tray here with the cup holders, we're going to open up our center console, and you'll see that this piece extends up here along the edge. So what I like to do is grab a panel tool or some sort of pry tool, and you'll see right under the edge there, you can insert your tool and you can start to pry up. There we go. Usually the whole thing will pop off like it just did, and we can remove this, and you'll see that this whole tray is just held in with all of these retaining clips. So now that that's out of the way, we'll go ahead and close the center console. It will not latch because the latch mechanism is on the cup holder tray, but let's set that part out of the way. All right, so pretty easy to get the center console and the factory head unit out of your Tundra. The next part of the disassembly is we're going to go ahead and completely remove the front passenger seat. So let's swing over to the other side of the truck and we'll get the seat out of the way. All right, steps to get the front passenger seat out are super simple. We're going to trade our 10 mil out for a 14 millimeter socket. We're going to go ahead and remove the 2 front seat bolts. We'll move to the rear and get those out as well. That's the 2 front seat bolts. Let's move into the back seat and we'll get the 2 bolts out of the rear of the seat. All right, so we're here at the back of the front passenger seat. We've gone ahead and slid the seat forward, so give you a little bit better access to these rear seat bolts. But what we want to do is remove these plastic covers. Just grab these on either side and pull straight back and they will pop off. And again, 14 millimeter bolts. All right, now that we have all 4 bolts removed, we're going to move back to the front of the seat. We're going to slide it back, lean it back, and disconnect the couple of connectors below the seat. All right, let's go ahead and slide the seat back, and then we're just going to lean it back into the back seat. And as you can see, we have 3 connectors here on the bottom of the seat. Again, we're going to find the tab, depress the tab, and remove each connector. All right, with all 3 connectors removed, we can go ahead and lean the seat forward, slide it forward a bit, and then we're going to carefully take it out and set it off on the floor. With our front passenger seat removed, we now have access to the area where our new amplifier and powered subwoofer kit is going to go. So in this truck, since this one had the amplified non-JBL factory amplified option, the next step in this process so far is going to be, we're going to remove this factory amplifier. So to do that, again, fairly simple. So we're going to remove these 3 retainers, and actually the easiest way is if you just grab on either side, and we're just going to pull it straight up, and all 3 of those will come right out. We're going to set the cover here to the side. All right, so now we have the amplifier itself exposed. Next thing we're going to do is pull back the carpet and kind of follow the brackets here. And there will be 3 10 millimeter bolts that we need to remove. So here's one. And then towards the front of the amplifier, if you pull back the carpet flap here, you'll see the other 2. All right, with those 3 removed, the amplifier is now free. The only thing we need to do is disconnect the 2 harness connections here. So depress the tab and those will wiggle right out. And there we go. This is your factory amplified non-JBL amplifier. If that is the style that your truck has, we no longer need this. If your truck is a true non-amplified, you do not have this piece, so you could just skip through removing this. So we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to get ready to put our new amplifier and subwoofer in. All right, so like I just said, if you have the amplified non-JBL option, this is basically all of the disassembly that you will need to do. If your truck is a true non-amplified Tundra, we need to remove a couple more pieces, because in that application, we'll actually end up needing to run a power all the way out to the main start battery of the vehicle. So to do that, your disassembly steps also include removing this passenger side sill plate and the passenger side kick panel to make access to the firewall grommet here on the passenger side of the truck. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'll show you how to run the wire from the battery down to where your amplifier is going to go, and then we'll pick up back with the rest of the install of getting the rest of the harnesses and everything connected. If you need to remove the sill plate on the passenger side, really easy to do. You can either use a panel removal tool or just put your fingers up under the plastic and pull straight up. And then we're going to work it free. It's just held in with some clips. Set that to the side. Next piece to be removed is the passenger side kick panel. You'll see a black thumb screw retainer. They're holding the inside of it in. We're just going to twist that counterclockwise to remove, and then the whole panel will pull off. So here is the retainer. Again, just going to twist that counterclockwise. It will unscrew. And then we can grab the kick panel. And pull that off. If the little tabs come out, just go ahead and insert them back into the panel. You may need your panel tool to remove them if they stayed in the kick panel. All right, so while we're down here, the next thing to come off is this lower dash panel. So the way that this is held in is in each of these three spots, there is kind of a plastic retainer that looks like that that's pushed up through. So I'm going to use our panel tool or pry tool, and we're going to try to catch the edge, and I'll show you what it looks like once we get them kind of released and get the panel removed. But we're going to push the tab in. And release it. So that will release these three, and then the last one that needs to be removed is right here behind this little trim cutout. So again, I'm just going to insert some sort of pry tool here. And we're just going to work that piece down. And then behind that is one more of those clips. All right, with those removed, you can then pull the panel straight towards you. And here is the clip that I was talking about. So you can see how it's kind of folded over, and then it catches right there. So all we were doing with our tool is getting in and pushing it in like that to be able to pull down and release it from the upper panel. So you have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, this yellow clip, and then in the back where these slide into these two spots here. All right, so we removed all of this to make access to, there is a firewall grommet up here on the passenger side. This will be easier to see once we move into the engine compartment. We'll find the grommet on the other side, and then that's where we will pass our power wire through, again for the non-amplified option, and I'll show you how to do that next. All right, like I said earlier, if you have the non-amplified Tundra, you will need to run the provided power wire. So we're here under the hood. We have our power wire, and we're going to start routing this. What we're going to do is we're going to start here at the start battery. We're going to go along the inside of the driver fender. We're going to go along the back of the firewall, and we're going to eventually make our way into the cab through the firewall grommet located in the back corner on the passenger side. So a couple tools that you might need to complete the job. Obviously the power wire. We'll need zip ties and some sort of cutter. Also have a little utility knife. We're going to use this to cut a hole in the firewall grommet, and then we also grabbed our wire fish. Sometimes it's just easier to help push the power wire through. So we'll take our power wire. You'll see that the one end is already pre-terminated with a ring terminal. This will eventually, not right now, eventually be connected to the positive terminal on your battery. And then on the other end, you see it is already pre-terminated with a female bullet connector. This will eventually connect to our main harness from our Alpine amplifier kit. So we'll get this stretched out and we'll start mocking this up. All right, so we're gonna start with the ring terminal here near the positive terminal on the battery. Eventually it will get connected when we're all done. And then we're just gonna start routing kind of the rest of this wire. Go around behind the fuse box. Let's grab our other end. And we'll go back here in the corner. Just kind of work your way behind and around whatever you may have. All right. This is eventually kind of where we're going to end up. I'm going to grab one of the provided zip ties. And we'll just go ahead and secure power wire. I'm not going to tighten it all the way down, but just enough to where as we feed this around, we can keep the power wire pulled tight. So now we're just going to kind of keep following around, go behind, and then we'll just go straight across the back of the firewall. All right, so we'll get that laid out. We'll go grab a couple more zip ties and we will loosely hold it to anything back there that will secure it. And then next we'll work on the firewall grommet. So to secure the power wire along the back of the firewall, you really have two options. You can either use these brake lines right here and secure it to that, or you can see that there's these retainers on this piece of felt. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. You can also twist these off. And then when you pull on this piece of felt, this piece will drop down. And then this is actually a great place to hide wires. So we can tuck the wire up in here, and then we can put the piece of felt back on. There we are. So nice little slick way to hide some wires along the firewall. All right, so right down here you can see the passenger side firewall grommet. You can see the main harness going through there. What we're going to do is we're going to use our razor knife. We're going to cut a small X off to the side of where the main harness goes through there. The Toyota Tundra has a kind of a 2-layer grommet, so you have this part on this side and then there's an interior piece, so that's why we like to use these extendable bladed knives. We'll cut, like I said, an X through here, and then we'll extend the knife and make sure that it cuts all the way through. So let's go ahead and do that. Cut it one way. Cut through, so now we have an X. We'll extend our blade and make sure that we're actually all the way through. All right, so I can feel the knife went all the way through both sides of the firewall grommet. So sometimes you can just take the bullet connector and push it through. If not, you might want to use a wire fish or a coat hanger. All right, so we actually got it to go through with the bullet connector, so we'll just keep pushing some of this wire all the way into the cab. Now that we have it started, we'll jump back into the passenger side floorboard and try to find our blue bullet connector. All right, so back on the passenger floorboard, you can see our bullet connector here from our power wire that passed through the firewall quite nicely. So now we're just going to pull the rest of the slack. All right, and what we're going to do is we're just going to work it down behind all these wires and then into the factory wiring channel. All right, so we're going to continue running this through the factory wiring channel here. So we'll just run it under these hold downs. I'm just going to keep working it through, and what we're going to do is we're just going to tuck it right here under the carpet. That's where it's eventually going to live. So for right now, we can just leave it right there. All right, so that wraps up running the power wire for the non-amplified setup. The next thing that we're going to want to grab out of our install parts bag is the actual main harness for the amplifier, and I'll show you how to start to run that from this underseat area up to behind where your head unit needs to go. All right, so we grabbed our main harness. This comes with the Alpine 4-channel amp and powered subwoofer. Your harness will look a little bit different depending on which option you selected at checkout, whether it be a 14 to 19 truck, a 20 to 21 truck, whether you have a factory or an aftermarket head unit. But essentially the part that's going to get connected where the amplifier and the subwoofer goes in all cases is going to have this clear, like white 14-pin connector. You're going to have two other small connectors, RCAs, a yellow power wire with a male bullet connector, and then a ground wire that is already pre-terminated with a ring terminal. This is the end that is going to stay under your passenger seat. This is going to connect to the amplifier, the subwoofer, and your power and ground for the kit. So we're going to set that right under where the middle of the seat should be. And then the part that we're going to want to run up towards the radio. So like I said at the beginning of this video, this is a 2021 truck. So if you have a 20 or a 2021, you will have two black connectors if you have a factory head unit. So I'm going to show you the factory head unit first, and then I'll show you the aftermarket head unit option as well. So you'll notice you'll see a bunch of smaller 4-pin connectors that are labeled front, rear, sub, and then you have a remote wire. This is the end that you're going to want to work up towards your radio. So to do that, what we're actually going to do is along the side panel here of the center console, we're going to take the wire and we're going to go towards the front, kind of where it meets the bottom of the dash. There's going to be a little spot there that you're going to be able to get in to the center part of the dash, and then we're going to work it up the middle of the dash to get to where the radio was previously. So take your time when you're doing this. There's a way through. You just got to find it. I'll do my best to try to show it to you, but we're going to start with these ends that go towards the radio. All right, so we are here on the passenger side floorboard. This is the bottom of the side of the center console, and we're all the way up towards the front here. You see there's this little retainer here. Right above that, if you reach your hand in there, you'll feel a little opening. You can work your radio or amplifier harness cable up through there, and that will get you into the center of the console. So another trick, anytime I'm running stuff in the dash or trying to get it through the dash, what I like to do is actually use a flashlight, and I'll kind of point it up like that, and then you can look down through wherever you're trying to get to and just really follow the path of the light. So I'm going to start with one of the plugs. You can tape these together if you want, whatever's kind of easier for you to get these through. Again, there's lots of ways to do this. It's just really whatever works best for you in your situation. So I'm gonna, all right, so I have the cables in my right hand going through that little spot in the dash that I was just talking about. With my left hand, I'm gonna kind of reach in. You just, again, find kind of the best way to do this. If you just kind of wiggle it around, all right, so kind of just pushed it straight up and through. I now have that connector between the fingers on my left hand. So now, as you can see, as that starts to come out, I have one side of the harness. Now I'm just going to very gently work the rest of the harness through until I get my other connectors to come out. So I'm just kind of feeding with my right hand and gently pulling with the left. All right. So there we go. So we'll feed a little bit more of this harness through. All right. So eventually we want to end up right here where the radio was. So I'll move the factory wiring out of the way for right now. All right, now that we have our harness right here, we want to go behind these supports in the dash. So the best way that I found to do this is in the Tundra, you can see there's this piece of foam right here between the two dash supports. I just kind of take my fingers and I'm going to kind of push back on that a little bit and kind of bend it out of the way. But what that will allow us to do is we can push that back. If you reach your hand in from the top, again, we're just going to work these connectors through. Grab our other one. All right, work that all the way through until we have all of our connectors and our blue remote wire accessible behind the radio. So that's plenty of wire right there. So now what we can actually do is leave this, and then we'll go back down and we'll start tidying up the rest of the main harness, going back to where we started under the seat. All right, now we're back on the passenger floorboard. We're gonna clean up our harness here. So we're actually just gonna take this and go directly behind the plastic. So we'll loop that there. And then all we're gonna do is we're just gonna push it up between the plastic here and the carpet. So if you need to pull the plastic out a little bit, you can do that. And you see how easily this just slides behind and is nicely concealed. All right, so we're gonna keep doing that until we get to this split in the carpet. And then we can pull the carpet out and tuck our harness behind. So now we have our harness going up to the radio. These are for your seat. In this truck, we have the factory amplifier connections, and we have our power wire. So in both cases, now everything is run below the seat. Now we just need to start making some connections here. All right, guys, now that we have all of our wires that we need run, I'm gonna walk you through how to make the connections to the amplifier and the subwoofer for both options. This installation portion is for the non-amplified Tundras. So if your truck did not have an amplifier at all from the factory, follow these instructions. If you have the amplified non-JBL, we'll cover that in a moment, so you can skip ahead a little bit in the video. So first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna pull back the carpet and attach our ground for our harness. So here on the edge of the wiring channel, we can pull back the retainer and we'll pop the carpet out. And we're just gonna kind of pull it back towards the front here. And we'll move, for the time being, we'll move our seat connections out of the way. And I'll tuck this back so you guys get a good view of what I'm doing here. So on the harness that we just ran, the one that you guys got from us with your kit, you'll see there is a black ground wire with a ring terminal, and it's labeled ground. We are going to use the factory ground right here along this front seat support rail. So you can see right here is a 10mm bolt. So we're going to grab our 10mm socket and we'll remove that. If for some reason your truck does not have a 10mm bolt already installed in the truck, we do provide one in the parts bag for you. So look for that if you need it. So we're gonna grab our black ground wire. We're gonna take the bolt that we just removed, pass it through the ring terminal, and then simply put it right back where it was. So we'll get that started, and then we will tighten it up with our 10mm socket. All right. All right, the next connection is our ground wire that we ran to the battery. So again, blue bullet connector. On the Alpine harness, you see there's a yellow wire labeled battery. It also has a blue bullet connector. So we're just gonna connect those together and make sure when you connect them, you get the metal part completely covered, make sure it's all the way seated. So then what we can do is we can get the rest of our connectors over here, and then we can go ahead and fold our carpet back. Don't forget to pull your seat connectors through. And we'll clean up our carpet, tuck it back under the center console. Have our seat connectors over here. We got our carpet cleaned back up. Now all we have is the connections that we need to make to the amplifier and the subwoofer. So let's grab that. All right, so the way that we've set the subwoofer and the amplifier in the brackets already for you is so that all of the control surfaces of the subwoofer and the amplifier face towards your back seat. So that way you have nice, easy access to them if you ever need to adjust anything. So the white connector here and the RCAs will go towards the back seat. So we'll just place the bracket down. So on the harness, we'll start with the two black connectors here. These are going to go to the input and output side of the amplifier. So if you look at the amplifier, they will only plug in to one side. So we're just going to match the connections, push them in until you hear a nice snap. That means they are fully seated. Do the same thing on the other side. And then we have our 14-pin connector is going to go into the subwoofer. Push that all the way in. And then on the subwoofer, you'll have a set of RCAs. We're just going to match the red to red and the white to white. All right. All right, now we're going to go over how to connect the amplifier and the subwoofer if you have the amplified non-JBL option. So that's the non-branded amplifier that was here under the seat that we removed earlier. If you have that option, here's the instructions of how to hook up your Alpine system. So we have the harness ran. The other piece that we need is our T-harness, our little bypass harness here. So it's got two connectors and a yellow power wire. So we need that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to run the ground wire. So we're going to pull back the carpet here, kind of pull it back from under the center console, lift off the edge here, and I'll just pull it all the way back so that you guys can see what's going on here. And we'll move the seat connectors out of the way. All right, so first thing we need to do is grab the ground wire. It is the black wire coming off of the Alpine harness. It has a nice little label on it. It says ground, and it has a pre-terminated ring terminal. So right here along the front seat support rail, you'll see that there's a factory ground location. There's a 10mm bolt holding that in. We're going to remove that 10mm bolt, attach our ring terminal, and then re-secure it using the same bolt. For some reason, your truck does not have a 10mm bolt already installed. We did include one in your extra parts bag, so be sure to grab that as you will need it to ground the ground wire. All right, so we're going to take that out. We're going to run it through the ring terminal and then simply put it right back where it was. And get it started, and then we'll get it tightened up with our 10mm socket. All right, so that is the ground. Next up, we're going to grab our T-harness. It's got two different size connectors on here, so there's no way to connect them together, and on your factory amplified non-JBL connectors, they are also different sizes. So all we need to do is line up the connectors from our amp bypass and simply connect those together. Now the only connection we have left is the yellow power wire. We can grab the yellow power wire labeled battery off of our amplifier harness, and we're going to connect the bullet connectors together. Make sure that they are all the way seated and the little insulator is completely covering that. We don't want it to short out on anything. Now we have our power and our ground connected. We have our amp bypass in place, so we can put the carpet back now. So just clean these connector wires up so that everything sits nice and pretty under the carpet. So we're going to tuck those down. We're going to put our seat connectors back through the carpet. All right. Make sure that our other connectors and our RCA are towards the back. We'll need those in a second. Go ahead and put the carpet back down. We'll tuck it in under the center console. Clip it in here. Great, so we have all that tidied up. Now we're going to grab our amplifier and our subwoofer. We'll get that set in the truck and we'll start making the connections. All right, so your subwoofer and your amplifier will already come in the brackets. We've set this up so that all of the control surfaces for your gains and your settings are going to face towards the back seat. That way you can easily get to them if you need to. So when we set this in, the 14-pin connector and the RCAs on the subwoofer here are going to go towards the back seat. Now we can lift it up here. We'll start with the two black connectors. They are different sizes. They both go to the amplifier. One goes to the input side, one goes to the output side. So we're just going to match them up. So the larger one will go towards me. I'm going to push that in until it snaps into place. Line up the other connector. Push that into place. Set our kit down. So that is the amplifier. Now we have two connections left. We have the 14-pin connector. It's going to go right here in the back of the subwoofer. And that clicks into place, and then you will have sub outs for the RCAs. We're going to match up white to white and red to red. All right, so we've gone through the connections here to the amplifier and the subwoofer. The next step is we're going to move up and start making connections to the radio. One thing to note, we're not putting anything back together. We're not bolting anything in quite yet. We want to get the radio installed, and then we'll test everything out, and then we can put the truck back together. So let's go ahead and we're going to start with the factory radio. I'll show you how to connect the system to a factory radio, and then I'll also show you a couple of aftermarket options. In this segment of the video, we're going to cover how to connect the Alpine 4-channel amp and powered subwoofer kit to a factory head unit. Again, this is a 2021 truck, so this is going to apply to both the 2020 and 2021 Tundras. The first thing that we need to do is grab out of your install parts. There's this little jumper wire with a T-tap on it, and we've provided the T-tap. This will be used to grab the remote turn-on wire for the amplifier and the subwoofer. So we're going to start by tapping this wire into one of the wires coming out of the factory connector, and I'm going to show you which one here in just a second. The wire that we want to tap into for our amp turn-on is going to be one of the main vehicle connectors here. So on the gray connector, we're going to flip it over here on the back, and on the right side of the connector, we're going to go down one row and over two pin locations. So the middle row, one second pin location in, you're going to find a gray wire with a yellow tracer. This is the wire that we're going to put our T-tap on. So we'll grab our T-tap, make sure that the wire is in the middle of the metal prong. Go ahead and close it. Make sure that it snaps closed. And then the male spade here, insulated spade, we're going to connect this. We want to make sure that it goes in the slot on the T-tap. All right, so we have that connected. Now on the other end, you'll see that we have a female bullet connector. And then there is a male bullet connector coming off the harness that we ran earlier. It is labeled remote. So we're going to connect those two bullet connectors. All right. Once we have those connected, we can tuck the rest out of the way. We now want to grab our factory head unit. And that's the way it went in the dash. So I'm going to hold it down like this. And the first thing we're going to connect is our new Alpine harness. You'll notice there is a male connector here that is going to go right into the back of the radio. So that is going to give us signal out from the head unit going down to the amplifier. The other side of our Alpine harness is the correlating female. We're going to find the factory plug, and that is going to connect. All right, so now we have signal going from the head unit, going down to the amplifier and the subwoofer, and then the other side is the return, so that's the output side coming back up to our factory wiring, which is then going to go out to all of our speakers. So that is all of the connections that we need for our new system. Now we just need to connect the rest of the factory systems back. So we're going to match up the plugs. Again, if you took a picture of this at the beginning, go ahead and pull your picture out and use it as reference. Get all these connected. And we'll just keep looking around. We got a couple more connections here to make. All right, last one, blue to blue. And we'll just give it one more quick check. All right, all of the spots are filled up, so that means that we have everything connected. We have our new Alpine harness connected. So at this point, we can tuck this back in the dash. Make sure all your wires are out of the way of where your 10mm bolts are eventually going to go. And we can, for the time being, we can push our factory radio back into the dash. All right, now we have our factory head unit installed back into the truck. So this is the time when we're going to power the truck on and make sure that everything is working. I'll go ahead and let you know now, if your radio comes on and your speakers are loud, but you're not getting any subwoofer, check the blue light. You're looking for a blue light on the power light on the subwoofer. If that light is not on, it is more than likely your remote turn on. So double check the T-tap. If you use the T-tap, then make sure that it's making good connection to that wire. If it's not, you may need to pull back a little bit of the sheathing to make sure that you have a good connection there. So we're going to go ahead and power the truck on. Just put it in accessory power. All right, so we're going to test the CarPlay function as well so I can get some music. So I'm going to grab the USB panel here so we can reconnect the factory USB. So we'll just connect that. We'll grab our phone cord. All right, so let's go ahead and connect our phone. Pull up Apple CarPlay. All right, we've got the song playing. All right, so we do have volume there coming from all the speakers. Just reached over here, felt the subwoofer. I mean, obviously you can hear the bass. Just touch it, make sure it is working. And then one other thing that we want to do as well is we're going to go into audio, go to our sound, and we're going to check our fade and balance. So we're going to go front left. So volume is over here. Let's go to the front right. Now it's over there. All right, perfect. So our fade and balance, everything is still playing where it's supposed to be. So that's going to wrap it up for as far as the test. We do have sound. Now we'll go over towards the end of this video about your amplifier and gain settings. So let's go ahead and shut the radio off and shut the truck off, and we'll move on. In this segment of the video, we're going to cover how to connect a couple different aftermarket head unit options to the 2021 Toyota Tundra. So the first one we're going to start here, this is actually one of our Alpine ILX F509 plug-and-play bundles. And on the back of the radio, we are going to use the RCA outs from the radio to connect to our amplifier and subwoofer harness. So what you're looking for in this setup is something labeled front out, rear out, sub out. So if your head unit has 6 RCAs, 2 fronts, 2 rears, and 2 subs, this is how you're going to connect it to the harness. All right, so looking at the back of our Alpine head unit, we have our main vehicle connectors from our Maestro radio harness. And then we also need our RCAs that we were just talking about. So we got 2 fronts, 2 rears, 2 subs. So we'll grab our Alpine harness and we're going to find our RCAs. We're going to connect those first. So this one is labeled front. So on our Alpine unit, we will find our front. We're going to do white to white and gray to red. So that's going to be our front left and front right speaker channels. Next, we're going to do our rears. So harness labeled rear. Rear out on the Alpine unit. So we're going to do green to white and then purple to red. So it's going to be rear left, rear right. And then the last set is our subwoofer. And this we're going to do red to red and white to white. So that is head unit down to the amplifier and the subwoofer. Now we need to do the return side. So in the normal configuration, you would be using all 3 of these connectors with our plug-and-play bundle harness. So the black one here, you see that the Alpine unit has one that looks exactly like it. So we're not going to use the one from the radio harness. We want to use the one from our amplifier kit. So that is going to connect to the factory speaker wiring. So that plugs in there. And then like I said, this black plug is not going to be connected to anything anymore because we want the sound to go from the head unit down to the amplifier and the subwoofer, out of the amplifier and out to the speakers. We do not want it backfeeding into the head unit. So that's out and in. The last thing we need to do is get our remote wire from our Alpine harness. And right here next to the main vehicle connectors, you see we have a female bullet connector and the little tag says amp turn on. So we want to connect our remote and our amp turn on together. The rest of the vehicle connectors for the Alpine, you're going to match up the corresponding connectors. So, and again, this third black connector here is not used. So that is connecting it to an aftermarket head unit that has 6 RCAs. All right, last example that I'm going to show you guys is how to connect the Alpine 4-channel amp and powered subwoofer to an aftermarket radio that only has 5 RCA pre-outs, so 2 front, 2 rear, and 1 sub out. So here we have an example of that. So if we split out our RCAs, we have front, we have rear, and we only have one sub out RCA. So included with your kit, we've given you a RCA Y splitter. So the front and the rear are going to connect exactly the same. You're going to take your Y splitter. You see it has a male end. You're going to plug that into the single sub out RCA from your radio. And now you have two sub outs. So now we have two front, two rear, two sub. So moving back into the truck again, show you guys just the RCA on this. So we're going to grab the RCAs from our Alpine bundle that we're installing. And again, we're going to find the fronts. And these are nicely labeled, front out left, front out right. So, but again, white to white, and gray to red on the front, front left, front right. We'll grab the rears and grab the rear RCAs. We're going to do green to white and purple to red. So that's going to be rear left and rear right. Now on our Y splitter here, if you look at the, like there's little grippy things on here. So these are clear and these are red. So that's what we're going to use as our reference. So we're going to go white to clear, and then we're going to go red to the one that has the red tint to these little spots on it. So again, now you have two fronts, two rears, and two subs. Again, the harness here coming from our Alpine amplifier and subwoofer is going to go to the factory connector coming from the truck. And our remote wire will again connect to the remote turn on coming from our Maestro radio harness on our plug and play bundle. So that gets you your aftermarket head unit with 5 RCAs out to your amplifier and subwoofer, back to your factory wiring with a remote turn on for your amplifier and your subwoofer. All right, if you guys have stuck with me this far, we've gone over how to connect a factory head unit, an aftermarket head unit with 5 RCA outs, an aftermarket head unit with 6 RCA outs. So if you have one of our plug and play bundles, you're covered. If you have any of the other aftermarket head units, the steps are going to be pretty much the same, just depends on if you need the Y splitter or not. So at this point, you can go ahead and install whatever head unit option you have in your Tundra. Go ahead and get the radio put all back together and get it back in the dash, and then give everything a test. Again, we want to check the balance and fade, make sure that our amplifier's working, make sure that our subwoofer's coming on. So you guys go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and put in the radio that this customer previously had installed in his truck, and then I'll get back with you guys for the reassembly of the vehicle. Now that you guys have your head unit of choice installed back in your Tundra, let's go ahead and give it a quick test. So we have ours powered on here. We got some music playing. We just grabbed the lower USB panel and hooked it back up so we could plug in. This unit actually has wireless CarPlay, so I have it connected to that. So whatever you guys need to do to connect to your head unit, let's find some music. All right, so we're gonna go to our sound settings. We're gonna go to balance and fade. All right, front left, front right, rear right, and rear left. All right. So everything in our truck is working like it's supposed to. All the sound is going where it's supposed to. If you're checking your balance and fade and you fade to the left and your music plays to the right, go back and check your RCA connections. You might have something flip-flopped. So go ahead and double check those. Again, if your amplifier is playing, but your subwoofer is not coming on, and you don't have that blue indicator light on your 8-inch subwoofer, go back and check your remote turn on wire. That is usually the #1 culprit of the subwoofer not working. So make sure that's got a good connection. And now that we have everything tested and everything's playing like it should, now all we need to do is put the truck back together, and then at the very end we'll make all of our final adjustments to our gains, our settings, and our EQ. Right, so while we're up here in the driver's seat area, I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to put the center console back together, and then we can move back down to the passenger floorboard and get the seat and all of that stuff put back in. So first thing I'm going to do is grab the cup holder assembly. So we want to open the center console, slide the panel to the front, lined up, push it down, make sure that it all snaps into place. Then we can close our center console. Next, we can grab the 4 10mm bolts to secure the radio. We'll start with the 2 here in the front. We'll get the 2 all the way in the back. Alright, now our radio is secure. Let's grab our HVAC panel, make the 1 connection to the back. Alright, hazard buttons work, sweet. Go ahead and snap that back into place. Let's grab our lower panel here, and we need to make sure we connect everything. So, power outlet. Red wire went to the right, and then the rest of these we're just going to match up the plugs. All right, got everything connected there. Line up the bottom, line up the top, push that back into place. Let's not forget our shift knob. All right, shift knob's back on, so that wraps up the center console. Let's move over to the passenger side and we'll get the seat and we'll start getting all of that tidied up. Moving back down here to the passenger floorboard, if you disassembled any part of the underside of the dash or the kick panels, now is the time to go ahead and put those pieces back in. So we're going to start with the under dash piece. So we're going to line up the pins here along the firewall. And then push these clips back into place, get that lined up, and then just snaps right back up in there. All right, next piece to replace is the kick panel cover. I'll work that in, push it in. We got our pin lined up back there, get our retainer, push that back into place. Now let's grab our door sill. All right, our door sill, the little cutout here is going to go right around that. Line that up. Just pop that right back into place. Let's go grab our seat. So we want to carefully put the seat in the truck because where it was, now we have an amplifier and a subwoofer under the seat. All right, so with our seat in, let's grab our connectors for the bottom of our seat. We'll get all these plugged back in. All right, so here's the trick with this. When we put the seat down, the bracket for the amplifier and the subwoofer, we want the seat on top of the bracket, which is going to then line up with the factory mounting holes. So we're going to gently put the seat down, and then we're going to adjust the brackets. You will be able to push them in and out and kind of flex them a little bit until we can get all of the holes lined up so that we can start the 14mm seat bolts by hand. We're going to go around and we're going to start all 4 of the seat bolts before we tighten them down. That way we make sure that the subwoofer and the amplifier and the seat and everything's lined up and where it's supposed to be. All right, so we're going to lower the seat. You need to adjust it. And on the front, there's a locating pin. So we need to line that locating pin up with this hole, and then the seat bolt will go there. Sometimes this is definitely a two-handed job. I got one started over here. Now we'll work on this side. Got that lined up. Here we go. Got that one started. Like I said, I'm just going to start these pretty much as I can with my fingers. Now we're going to jump to the back. Now that we have the front lined up, we're going to do the same thing in the back. So let's slide the seat forward. And then we're going to do the same thing here in the back. Again, get the seat lined up. Get a couple threads there. Let's do the last one. All right, there we go. Now we got the 4th one started. Now we'll grab our 14mm socket and we'll get these tightened down. Since we're here in the back and we got those finished up, let's go ahead and replace the plastic covers. Find the side that it fits. Push those back on. All right, so there we go. There's the back. Let's slide the seat back and we'll tighten up the front and we'll be done with putting the seat back in. All right, so we have our seat back in. The entire truck is back together. So I'm going to go over real quickly kind of some of our general recommendations for tuning amplifiers and the head units and the systems and everything. I will let you know that Alpine has a recommendation for its amplifier and gain settings. These are included both in the written installation guide from TrailGrid Pro that you received when your item shipped. The Alpine installation guide is also linked on the product page, and all of these amplifiers and subwoofers will be preset to the Alpine recommendation before they ship to you. Obviously, that is always up to your personal preference, what you want the end result to be. So I'll show you how we recommend to set amplifier gains and settings, but at the end of the day, it's your truck, it's your listening experience, so you can tune it to exactly how you want to listen to your music in your truck. So I'm going to jump back in the driver's seat. We're going to get some music on and I'll go over our general recommendation guidelines for how to appropriately set the gains on your amplifier and your head unit. So we get a lot of questions about what does it mean to set the gains on my amplifier. Our general recommendation is anytime you have an aftermarket amplifier or an aftermarket head unit or aftermarket speakers and you change out any one of the components, is to reset and retune your head unit or your amplifier. Just because of the way that it was set with the old setup doesn't mean it necessarily translates to what you now have in your truck. So our recommendation is, if you've tuned your amplifier or your head unit before, we want to set all of those things back to flat. So what does that mean? If you have a EQ preset, set that back to off. The settings on the amplifier, we're going to turn the gains or the volume level, we're going to turn all the way down to minimum or almost what off is. That way we're starting at a net zero. Then what we want to do is we want to adjust the volume on our head unit first. What this does is, in a lot of radios, the higher the volume number equals higher power output. So we want to send the amplifier the most amount of power possible so that the amplifier does the least amount of work. A lot of times what we hear is people have the volume on their radio at like 5, they crank up the gains on their amplifier, the speakers start clipping, they start cutting out, it gets distorted, it sounds horrible. So what we want to do is we want to start with the head unit. That's where the signal starts, that's where we're going to start. So we turn the volume up on any song of your personal preference, turn it up to about 75% of maximum volume. So if your max volume is 50 on your radio, somewhere in the 40 to 42 range. This is going to leave us somewhat of a fudge factor in case somebody else gets in your truck and they're like, oh, let me see what this will do. And they turn it all the way up. We're not worried about frying our system. So we're going to find a song that's going to play for a while. We're going to turn the volume up to about 75% of max. Then we're going to go to our amplifier and we're going to start with the front channel and we're going to start turning the gains up. You're going to turn them up until you get to a desired listening level. Then you're going to repeat the same process for the rear gains. You're going to turn those up until you get to the desired listening level. Now, keep in mind, in most vehicles, such as this Tundra, you have 6.5-inch speakers in the back door, you have 6x9 speakers in the front door. The back doors aren't going to be able to handle as much mid-bass response or as much as the setup in the front doors. Generally, the back seat is fill for the backseat passengers. So we don't need to go crazy on the rear gains. After you're happy with front and rear, then we're going to move on to subwoofer. We're going to set the sub where we want it. After you're happy with the overall sound and volume, then we can go back into the head unit, into the EQ settings, and we can start tweaking, or as we like to say, adding a little salt and pepper to flavor so that you can tune your new system into your preferred listening experience. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here on camera. I'm going to turn the volume up so it's going to be hard to hear what I'm saying, but these are the steps that I'm going to do. I'm going to start with the head unit, 75% of max volume, then I'm going to start adjusting the amplifier, and then I'm going to come back to the head unit, salt and pepper to taste, and when we're happy with it, then we're good to go. I got my EQ off. All of my stuff is set to 0, so let's go find some music. All right, let's turn this up. Start a new song. So you guys watch me, that was real time. It only takes a few moments. We now have a much improved system. If you guys have driven Toyotas, you know the JBL amplified systems, the amplified non-JBL systems, and definitely the non-amplified systems, they all need a little bit of help. This kit from Alpine with a 4-channel amplifier and an 8-inch powered subwoofer has brought this truck to a life that it probably never thought that it could have. This amplifier is going to give you a whole lot more control than that amplified non-JBL amplifier ever could. We now have bass that we didn't have before. These are still factory speakers in this customer's truck. These things have even come to life. If you're looking for a great, simple, well-packaged, sleek, as you guys see, it takes up no space, upgrade for your 2014 to 2021, either non-amplified or amplified non-JBL Toyota Tundra, I'm telling you, this is going to be the perfect package for your truck. If you want to pick up one of these or any of our other great plug-and-play options, head over to the website at www.trailgridpro.com, and like always, have a blast out there.